And now back to your regular programming.
If you speak better to yourself.
You showed up for probably the dumbest conversation we've ever had on this show.
Let's have that smile again.
Tell me how that happens. Physically should not happen.
Relax.
If you say
Give me as well.
3 times a day, God will line it up.
He's just an absolute hack, and he gets his ass kicked by the teammates every week. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to Hack City. Joe DeLeone, Sean Anderson. Today we're going to be recapping the three college football playoff games. We're not going to do all 4. We're going to do a separate Sugar Bowl reaction just because of the timing of when that game is going to be played. But we're going to be discussing the outcomes of all of these 3 amazing games. Before we get there, though, Sean, can you share with our listeners a quick word from our friends over at BetOnline?
Yeah, I'm relishing in the idea that there's not going to be football forever. And this realization comes to me every single year around the new year. And that's when we start putting a little more money on the games and start really getting invested and really soak up the feelings of being a football fan, even if your team isn't in it. And I do my betting at BetOnline. It's the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. They got the easiest in-game live betting odds. BetOnline is providing you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. They got every sport. They got NBA, college basketball, NHL, UFC, all the football you need, which is all the football that we need and most of the betting that we handle. Head to BetOnline today. Don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Sean, starting off with the Fiesta Bowl, 31-14, Penn State beats Boise State. Look, there's going to be plenty of people that do the bit of, did you even watch the game? My main takeaway from this, Sean, Penn State dicked around for 2 quarters. The second quarter, the third quarter, the play calling in short area situations, they were trying to throw the ball in spots that didn't make a whole lot of sense. All Boise State was doing was sending relentless pressure. And then the minute that they realized in the fourth quarter, hey, let's get Nick Singleton to the outside away from that pressure, he started to break away for some big plays. Katron Allen had an awesome first half, but if you actually had a little bit of balance in that decision-making and running the ball, I really think that this game was going to be far more of a blowout than it was, specifically because of how much Ashton Jeanty was bottled up.
Yeah, I think Boise State gave a phenomenal effort tonight. Penn State gave a good effort in 2 quarters, the first and the fourth. The second and third quarter, they hate to put a full game together. I've been harping on it all year. If it's not the first half, then it's the second half. And now we see a new dynamo game from Penn State where they just take quarters 2 and 3 off. They can't happen in the next round. It just can't. No. And maybe it can. Maybe I'm the fool and I'm the mark on the midway that's getting gunned down because Penn State continues to win. It's a win. It's a playoff win, CFP win. Congratulations. This is why I think the CFP was expanded to get a big market team that just couldn't beat the 2 big brothers like Penn State have a win, make it exciting. We knew that they've just been on the outskirts in previous years. So I'm fine with them being in the playoff. I think they have the caliber of team. But when it comes down to coaching and how they manage throughout games this year, it has still been par at best. It does not seem like a team that is, if you play an Oregon, if you play somebody that's really going to give you bump for 4 quarters, that you can keep up because they just take quarters off. It's very, very frustrating when watching this Penn State team.
Credit does deserve to be given to Boise State for the fight that they did put up for spurts of this game. But as I talked about in every opportunity that I had to weigh in on this game leading up to it, the athletes eventually were going to prevail. The higher level recruits were going to eventually step up and make huge plays. Abdul Carter didn't even play most of this game, and they still were able to get the pressures necessary to get after Maddox Madsen, to set him up for the interceptions that he threw. One of them was very late in the game, but the 2 interceptions that he had were in spots where they very critically needed to finish on those drives. The one thing that's not surprising, or I was surprised that Ashton Jeanty didn't go over 150. I thought that if somebody was going to step up and have a huge game and everybody else around him was going to struggle, it was going to be Jeanty. But he goes 30 for 104 for 3.5 yards per carry, no touchdowns. That's a pretty good stat line for a running back. But for Jeanty, who has blown past everybody, including Oregon, that's pretty pedestrian. And that's a kind of just a typical normal day, especially on 30 carries that he only had 3.5 yards per attempt. Penn State's approach here worked really well. They allowed Maddox Madsen to make plays. Like, he was dotting up this Penn State defense at times because there was no help. There was nobody to turn to if somebody got beat. That was why there's so many big splash plays through the air. But eventually those drives slowed down when they tried to run the ball again, and it was 3rd and long, and that was led to 2 of the interceptions in this game. But the credit goes there for Penn State, the way that their defensive line played. That was what we knew coming into this, that they were special and that they're going to be special depending on who they face next round. They're going to probably have a huge performance to keep them afloat.
The Penn State defensive effort tonight was spectacular. It wasn't, hey, we just kept on bottling up Ashton Jeanty on tackles for loss. No, Ashton Jeanty doesn't get tackled for loss hardly ever because he breaks out of the first G5 tackle in the backfield and spurts out for another 10 yards. Penn State decided, we're not playing that game with you. We know how skilled you are. We know how talented you are. You're not going to start running all over us in a tirade, making us look like fools. We're going to swarm tackle. We are going to have 5 players coming in to tackle you. There's a great play from GT in the 4th quarter where he broke out of 5 tackles, whatever it was. That was like the only one tonight. Everything else was bottled up. If he broke the first tackle, there were 2 defensive backs, 3 defensive backs, and a linebacker ready there to bottle him up. He was the key focal point of the defensive game plan, and Penn State, to their credit, executed that very well. The issues of Penn State come with their offense. That's where they lie. The Penn State defense, so many props you can give them for what they've done on the year, and especially tonight when you have an absolute game breaker. You bottle him up for a pedestrian 104. That's all they needed to do. It was very impressive from that perspective, but they need to figure out what their tempo and balance is on the offense before the next round, and they need to do it fast.
It definitely has to be talked about. Andy Kotelnicki, who I have lauded as a great play caller and decision maker, the offensive coordinator for Penn State, he had a brutal day. Some of the things that they called in short area situations where it was clear that Penn State, if it wasn't for in some situations that Boise State was just sending ridiculous pressure in order to gain momentum against some of the rushing plays that Penn State called, they were getting a ton of pop off of every snap. They were driving Boise State off the ball, and they were able to create in the run game those 3rd and 1 situations that they tried these misdirection passes and trying to create confusion. Just run the freaking ball. This is not a game against Georgia or against Notre Dame where, they're going to try and just step up and stop you squarely for what you are, and sometimes you're going to need to confuse the hell out of your opponent. That's not what the situation was. Just run at them. Run down them. And then it took until the 4th quarter. It goes in line with what you said. Penn State does not play complete games. I don't have faith in them to finish and to win a national title. I'm taking them off the board for me. After the way they played against SMU, I was waiting to see how they play against Boise to keep them on that board of, are they a national champion caliber team? They're not, because you can't play 2 quarters of good football and then 2 quarters of mediocre, messy offense and shaky pass coverage against a team that you should have completely locked down in coverage. That is not going to work against Georgia or Notre Dame. And if they somehow won that matchup, it will not work against Ohio State, Oregon, who they already lost to, or Texas.
Yeah, the run game timing of when we're going to actually commit to it is so confusing, shocking, especially with how good it is. Before we move on to another game, is this as bad as Drew Allard can play in the CFP before he becomes a problem for the team? Like, could he play worse in the next round and Penn State still wins? Because he had I think anybody could chalk this up, say 171s, 3 touchdowns, no picks, a decent,
about
fine
50%
day.
completion percentage.
Yes, like this is about, in my opinion, he can't play any worse than tonight in the next round.
No, and what he needs to do, and it's always been a problem of his pocket presence was terrible. Like he not only, I'm not just talking about like seeing pressure and reacting to it, he kept stepping up and just trying to run through pressure, and it wasn't working. He needs to be better in his awareness, in that decision making, because to what you're talking about, no, he can't play like that against Notre Dame's defense. He can't play like that against Georgia's defense. It's a mess. And
he had a fine day and they won a CFP game, but if you really watch the game, his bad decisions are bad decisions. They're not, okay, that was incompletion because of a drop. It was an incompletion because he threw it into awful coverage or he sailed it out of bounds. It's his misses are legit misses. We're not working in a gray area. How bad is Jared Goff really? No, it is either he's thrown a laser beam down the middle, or he's thrown it up to Tyler Warren, or he's thrown it way out of bounds. And the way out of bounds or the picks that didn't come tonight, but we've seen eventually do come, are at times backbreaking. So I think he definitely needs to lock in, or we fully commit to the run, one or the other. You can't just keep on half foot into Aller's a really good 5-star prospect quarterback and half foot in, oh, we're so downhill run game. We've got two phenomenal backs that can pound and ground and pound a defense. They're just dancing on both lines. They either need to pick one or Aller needs to pick up his game significantly.
Sean, let's move on over to the thrilling overtime win for Texas as they knocked off and survived the late comeback by Arizona State. Biggest thing, and you tweeted this out, biggest thing that I see from this, one, Kenny Dillingham, amazing coach, proving that he is a riser in the industry despite being one of the youngest head coaches in college football. Not only a brilliant offensive mind, but also a guy that just knows how to rally the troops. They were relentless. Camp Scadaboo was relentless. But the thing that you put out there, Arizona State, despite all of the belly aching from folks, proved that they were worthy of being in this playoff field. They were worthy despite playing in what is easy to classify as a weaker conference in the Big 12. It didn't matter the score. It didn't matter that Texas was bigger and stronger and faster at a lot of positions. They found a way to stay in that game and to almost pull out the victory. If it wasn't for a great ball by Quinn Ewers on 4th down and overtime, they were walking away with a victory. That to me was just incredible fight from that team.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance here when discussing the CFP and this game. It was a wonderful game, a lot of offense, good hard-hitting defense. I love the effort on both teams all throughout. Texas, great effort. If you're sitting here and you're hating, you have criticisms for Texas in this game, you can have them. You could have criticisms about Sark talking to the kicker right before, but they played their asses off. They really did. The defense, I thought, really did not look like it was a bunch of loafs, and they had to match the energy of a high-energy Arizona State team that just made – I don't know if there's a program that gets more pumped to play football than they do. It was fantastic, and maybe this was just a great matchup that we got, and the stars aligned, and the way that the talent was spread across the two teams worked favorably for the CFP and what fans wanted throughout the playoffs so far. Maybe Indiana would have put up a better fight against Texas also. Probably. But for the most part, these are the games that I think that the committee needs to really highlight. If we like the expanded playoff, you're going to get some duds, but you have to understand that you're going to get games like these also. So the knee-jerk overreactions that we've seen through the first 6 games of the CFP, I'm not saying they're unwarranted, but now there's egg on a lot of face because we were just delivered this gem in the second round from a Big 12 team that snuck in at the very last minute and then put on a great show.
Oh, and I think we need to. I understand what you're saying, but we do need to contextualize here. Texas was overhyped. That is the truest takeaway to have from this. They don't know how to finish. They can't run the ball in critical situations when they need to. Their offensive line gets more and more banged up through this final stretch as Cameron Williams has been out, and now Kelvin Banks went down with an injury. Don't know what that situation is and if he'll be able to come back soon, but he's been banged up for a period of time as well. I still can't trust Quinn Ewers. I said this last week. I can't trust them. I can't trust them to just do what they need to do to close out an opponent that they do have an advantage on. That's the biggest part for me. Forget, yeah, we can do what we just talked about of, yes, Arizona State was worthy and whoever we wanted to play the game of should have been and should not have been. It's almost not fully necessary to talk about because those teams are now out of the mix. Texas is very, very much on watch of if they're actually a live threat for the national championship. I said after the Clemson game, I do not think that they are, and I am going to repeat and stick with that.
I get that. That's not totally unfair. And if I'm looking at Ewers from a possible recruit perspective for the next level, cooling off a little bit on him. But I will note his 2 biggest throws in this game came in overtime, and they were both great throws.
Don't they cancel each other out though with the bad pick that he throws?
That pick was a good defensive play from Arizona State.
Who would have thought that you're the Texas apologist?
I am not a Texas
Sounds like
apologist.
you are.
I'm just not writing off the team just yet. They had a great win against Arizona State. I think Arizona State, if they play like this, could have pushed other teams remaining in the CFP to this exact same limit, to the same stretch, and we would have had a very similar conversation of A, B, and C quarterback that could have been Quinn Ewers. I thought that he had a couple big-time throws in overtime that matters to me. When the chips are on the table, fourth down, season's on the line, and he throws a touchdown, that's going to make an impact with me. And I think it should with other people. That's a big throw. Come on, Joe. It's a big throw.
Okay, but I'm always... I don't like doing that, like forgetting the critical mistakes and bad plays that he had throughout the game. And it's not just him that are suddenly taken away because he made it's a great ball. You're right. It is a great throw. But at the same time, he's still turning the ball over when every single week we're saying, like, hey, can we trust Quinn Ewers to not have a bad, stupid turnover that gives the game back to the other team?
I don't think that was a bad one. And I also, now we're going back through my
he
my
threw it.
VHS
It's double
here.
coverage. He threw the ball into double coverage.
It
I don't know.
It wasn't the best decision, but it wasn't.
It was a bad decision.
Cataclysmic. I would even
it kind of was cataclysmic.
I would
they
even
got
that one
back
out.
into the game.
I would cancel that throw out with the throw he made on 4th and 2 to the sideline. A perfect throw, perfect catch. That was a huge conversion at that point in the game. I tell you what, I've seen worse performances from Ewers, is what I would say. It wasn't a performance where I'm dropping stock and I'm selling immediately.
I don't know, man. The way that you're phrasing this is like, it just feels like you got to do a little mental gymnastics to justify this being a good game for Texas. It wasn't. It was bad. It was a bad game for Texas when they're supposed to be bigger, stronger, far more explosive than the Arizona State team that they just faced.
I think they were probably more explosive, probably a little bigger. I don't know if I don't know if there's anybody on Texas stronger than Cam Scatterbo. I'm not sure about that. And then at times, you gotta give credit here. Levitt played out of his mind at times.
I just gave that credit.
Oh,
I gave the credit to Arizona State for playing the way that they did, but at the same time, like, can we not be critical of a team for literally the game started and it looked like it was over, and it looked like it was over when it was 24-8, and they couldn't freaking finish because they couldn't run the ball.
You know, I would love nothing more than to be critical of Texas, and I would laugh at their fans losing. With my teeth out happily. Yeah, they couldn't run the ball today. That was bad. But they still won a really hard game. It was tight fought. I'm just saying I'm not hitting panic buttons here.
I think you should be.
Okay.
Who are they beating? Right? Like, seriously, like, who are they gonna beat that they should
be dogs moving on.
They're the worst available team amongst those that moved on. At the current moment, because again, at the time of taping this, the Georgia-Notre Dame game has not been played.
I think that even without the Georgia-Notre Dame game being played yet, as at time of taping, they should still be dogs in all the rest of their games going forward. But in a game where they were 14-point favorites over Arizona State, and Arizona State mustered up
That's
a performance.
Cause for panic.
Oh, my God.
14 points you were supposed to win by, and you couldn't do that.
They still won.
They were also up by 14 points and surrendered it.
They can't close a game. You were right there. You were right where they can't finish against a team that's worse than them. They don't have the run game. That is going to hurt them.
All right, Sean, to cap off today's show, the third bowl game that has occurred that we're talking about today, the Rose Bowl. Oregon can't keep up with Ohio State. 41-21. This was a game that felt like it was over after the first quarter. And, you kind of joke about that with the other two games. And you were thinking like, oh, wow, this is starting to look like they could pull away with Penn State and with Texas. And Boise State and Arizona State put up a bit of a fight. This was not the case. Everybody expected this to be a potential all-time classic rematch between these two squads. But what was apparent, Sean, that Ohio State's pissed off. They are not effing around with how motivated they are since the Michigan game. They're going towards the national championship. I don't know how we can look at this in any other lens.
I am going to pull off the rare double walk back here as I'm back on that bandwagon. The Ohio State bandwagon that I abandoned after Michigan, I'm right back on it after this win. This is a huge win, a monster win. Oregon was a legit championship threat this season. Their offense was that good. Their defense could hang evidently before today with anybody. And how shocking is it to see the absolute dominance at 34-0 before a miracle touchdown before half that Oregon squeaks in. It was an absolute bludgeoning by 10 minutes into the second quarter, and there was no shot. The game was just done and dusted, over, and I'm back in on Ohio State. I know when we were making our preseason predictions back in August, I had Ohio State edging out the win in the national championship game. I'm happy to double back to that, but I'm embarrassed because of what they did throughout to close out their regular season that made me waver on them so much. You don't do that, I'm staying on the train, because this is the potential that we see out of an Ohio State team this year.
I think like what's the clearest outcome of this, and I don't even think it's a negative on Oregon. It's that Ohio State is playing to their potential that we thought that they had, but were missing, that they were just a little bit shy of, and they have run full speed into that potential amongst a playoff field that is just loaded with teams that have issues and questions and concerns for every team remaining. Ohio State, even though they're dealing with a banged up offensive line, I don't think they have any concerns. I don't see a team that I feel is held back by anything. That offensive line that was supposed to be a weakness and a massive anchor for them and hold the anchors. The way that I was trying to use the word anchor does not apply here. What I mean to say is that it was supposed to really kill them on this playoff run. That didn't show up in this game. They were going up against one of the best pass rushers in the country with Jordan Birch and Mateo Uiagalelei and Derek Harmon. They didn't even get anywhere near Will Howard. They didn't do very much to slow down Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins. The way that they look at the current moment and just the way that they're cohesively playing together is something that I can't pitch for any of the other remaining teams in this playoff field. I have to continue to ride Ohio State for what they've proven.
I was not going to be ready to ignore the big blip on the radar when they lost to Michigan. But this is a bigger blip on the radar, seeing how they used every single one of their stars to, I don't know if you would call it full capacity, but in the perfect way. Jeremiah Smith getting the ball, doing exactly what you need Jeremiah Smith to do. Break the defense, which is what he is excellent at. Both running backs, great days. Travion Henderson exceeded expectations a bit, but you could have flipped up both their stat lines. Wouldn't have been shocked. Would have still been happy. Will Howard, not as game manager, but still was able to manage and run the offense really well. Oregon, you have to assume that they're ready for this one with Lanning. They just got outmatched completely. Both sides of the ball, they got outmatched. I'm not going to start abandoning Lanning and joining the can't win a big game bandwagon. I don't believe that.
No, that's really reactionary, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to try to push that. And I know that Oregon fans are certainly frustrated. It's just that they got screwed with the timing and the scheduling, that if this playoff field was the way that many would have hoped, where it was the top 4 teams that got the buys and then the rest were just thrown and tossed in there in any which way order, and that they could have knocked each other off, Ohio State would not be meeting Oregon until potentially a little bit later, maybe the following round. I don't have the playoff picture in my head off the current moment, but to deal with them coming off of multiple weeks of rest, which is to Oregon's benefit, but just sitting at home, and Ohio State's just picking up all of this momentum like just an avalanche. It's like getting hit by a car going 90 when you're just trying to cross the street. Right? Like you're just starting to get going. Or actually, the better example, you're trying to merge and you're like, all right, I'm ready to start picking up speed and I'm about to go 90 and get in the left lane. But before you can, you get blasted by a 16-wheeler that's going 100.
Yeah, Texas is going to struggle in the next round.
18-wheeler or 16-wheeler?
18.
I don't know shit about trucks.
There could be a 16-wheeler.
No. Don't give me a pass on that one.
I'm not necessarily giving you a pass. I got you, buddy. But the Cotton Bowl, you couldn't see two teams enter under different circumstances. Texas eking one out against the Big 12 champion Arizona State versus Ohio State, who bludgeoned the best team in the nation, consensus, in Oregon like this. It's got to be Ohio State literally moving on to the championship game. I don't know what tricks Texas is going to try to pull out to beat this Ohio State team. They're just too balanced. They're too strong.
Why are we watching this? Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I've been trying to really not look up at the TV.
I didn't know what I put on. I didn't realize what I put on, but we're not watching good sports.
No.
Sorry, what were you saying?
We are void. I don't know at this point. Ohio State may, I think, win of the weekend for sure. Weekend win of the week for the quarterfinals.
Wednesday. Shit.
Barring, Captain, it's Wednesday. I feel you. Good God. I don't know. You know what? This sucks.
Wednesday.
The first needs to fall on like a Monday or a Sunday or a Tuesday. The first falling on a Wednesday, you can't really get started on the new year and what you want to accomplish because there's another weekend rolling right on you.
It feels like, I know this isn't football talk, but this is like one of the few games that you can like really truly like unpack because it was over at halftime. Before we close the show out, it feels like today is 2 weeks merged into one.
Yes.
That's what this feels like. It feels like Sunday was the beginning of the week, and it feels like that today was the start of the second week.
This Christmas to New Year's Day has just been absolute. It's so disorienting having middle of the week off. Can't stand it. I like my routine. I'd rather see this happen on a Saturday. Maybe I'll put the midweek karma on Oregon, and that's why they lost.
I do appreciate, and I know that prayers to New Orleans and everything that's happening. A very negative, terrible circumstance caused us to have the game spread across 3 days. I actually kind of like this concept that if they did it, they clearly don't care if they go head-to-head with the NFL. So why wouldn't they maybe do Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
If the NFL isn't going to schedule a Thursday game, I'm fine with them. Dominate it. Dominate the 3 days. No one else is going to touch you. College basketball isn't touching you right now. NBA ratings are tanking across the board. So I'd like them to spread. I don't need the four straight days. That's madness. But if there's a way you go 1-2-1, that's a nice little treat to pick you up into the new year. I do, even under the terribly unfortunate circumstances, think maybe if depending on the logistics and how people are receptive to it, just the game itself, we could be onto something here of how we want to schedule it moving forward.
Yeah, again, a very unfortunate circumstance. So prayers with the New Orleans community. We're going to be back doing another show this week talking about the Sugar Bowl between Notre Dame and Georgia once that game is played. We'll probably also not just do a singular reaction. We'll probably do like a little bit of a look ahead, just kind of thoughts and expectations for the following round. So be on the lookout for that coming out. We'll talk to you folks later. Enjoy the rest of your week.